So today we're looking at core values, compassion. And some of you may recall or remember at the end of March, April, we had some stands in this hall and also in the church hall. We had something called the F Project. And I understand that this Sabbath, the motivation for this program has come from the F word, which is the Forgiveness Project. Was anyone there? Yes, of course. So this is the motivation for this program, and hence why we're looking at compassion. The F Word Project, for those of you that are online or those of you that are visitors, the Forgiveness Project is a project that goes around nationally. It's a project that collects ideas of stories of trauma where people have gone through maybe a very difficult time, and then they're able to find forgiveness for whatever's happened and then to share their stories. And we're going to touch a little bit on that a bit later. But this is why we're looking at compassion, because if we forgive, we are able to be compassionate to those around us. But the title says core values. Has anyone heard of this word, core values? Core values, yes, no, yes, maybe, okay. Core values, there's an author by the name of Stephen Covey, 7 Successful Habits. And he talks about these are fundamental beliefs or something within an organization that guides principles of behavior. So it's something that is positive. It's something that gives people drive, something that gives people something to focus on, a core value. And he talks about core values in 4 areas. Core values being 1, integrity, respect, responsibility, and servant leadership. And when I looked at the book, what Stephen Covey had to say, and I looked at our church, I thought, wow, this is quite similar to the beliefs of what we believe as Christians. As Christians, we have integrity, we have respect, we have responsibility, but also we have the model of servant leadership, serving others in a common goal. Now, I'm not going to go over the topic again, but the whole theme today has been compassion. What a fantastic topic. And we've understood what it is to be compassionate. But I think one of the questions that maybe we need to ask ourselves when we leave here this afternoon is, how do I apply compassion to those here, to those in my family, to those in my community, and those in our wider surroundings? How do we apply compassion where we are? I'm not sure if any of you have been following. I'm just going to get the media team to put up a slide. I don't know if any of you have been following a young lady, because we're talking about children, teenagers, a 15-year-old, 16 now. Her name is Greta Thunberg. Has anyone heard of her? Has anyone seen this? What does that mean? Anyone? Can't hear you. Okay, for those that are online, striking for climate change. Can you believe this, guys? We've had our children here who are awesome. But a 15-year-old kid from Sweden was sick and tired about climate, emissions and everything else. And she was bothered about this. And she wanted to do something at 15 years old. So to August 2018, she decided, Daddy, Mummy, I'm not going to school. Well, I know if my daughter said that, I know what I'd have replied. Where is she? Anyway, that's another story. But she was determined, I'm not going to school. And as good parents, they listened to her daughter and wanted to understand and grapple, why do you not want to go to school? And she said, Mummy and Daddy, I'm concerned about the climate. If you have a core value, you are passionate about doing something different that affects others. So some of you who knows the story already, Greta Thunberg, August 2018, on a Friday, she didn't go to school. She went to the Houses of Parliament, she put this sign up, and she sat there. If you read her story, you watch TED Talks, fantastic testimony. TED Talks, 50-minute talk, absolutely brilliant. But she's a bit of a loner, but she went to the Houses of Parliament in Sweden and just sat down. I want to make a difference. And this continued for Friday after Friday. And after a while, her school friends wrestled with the fact that, why are you not going to school? And she said, because of this. And a 15-year-old, now 16, in March of this year, there was about 71 countries that were following this kid, this 16-year-old. Isn't that incredible? All because of making a difference to the climate. I remember my daughter said to me on Friday, she said, Daddy, it was a Thursday, Daddy, is it possible that I could not go to school? And I said, well, is there a teacher's day or something like that? And she spoke, and I had no idea who she was talking about until I read up. But this young girl is making a difference where she is because she's compassionate about the climate, reducing emissions, giving people in third world countries a better life and providing electricity, clean water, and the list goes on. But I believe that she's making a difference. I want to transition to local context, to our context in regard to our community. Some of you may know that in London, where I'm from, there is a massive issue with gun and knife crime. We've all heard about that. It's in the media. I believe this year alone, we've had 100 deaths of young people. It's terrible. It's not good. And I'm proud to say that there are organizations, churches like ourselves, youth groups, communities that are very interested in making a difference. And as a church, I just want to show you a quick report of what we are doing in the community, showing compassion, trying to make a difference. Here's a little slip. Here's a little video clip. Slip clip. This was Bank Holiday Monday.
Do you feel like it's an issue that's getting worse, or events like this and marches like this going to hopefully make it better?
Well, hopefully we'll raise awareness in the neighborhood, right? So, like, people getting involved and making these like something that everyone should know and participate in will help.
The sound of the drums heard at today's Peace March fell silent. But the spirit and determination showed by Hackney's youth shows their concerns won't be silenced and they will continue to beat their drums of peace.
So, we're doing something called People's Kitchen, which is a project that started a few years ago, and it's basically collecting food that is running out of date and using it to make a meal.
We've got some of the members of Newbold Youth Group here, and we're at this lovely venue, and at 6 o'clock we're going to get members from the community to come join us for a meal.
It's just nice to get out and do something that's bigger, to have a bigger perspective, and not just to be entertained at church, but to start thinking about the community and caring about people around us. Yeah, this is important for us, and I think we all get along much better as well when we're doing it.
Acts of compassion in our community. Some of you may know I wear two hats. I work as a chaplain for the college, but I also work as a director for community services and teenagers. And I was excited to be with the young people of Hackney on Monday. I'm excited to see our young people of Newbold and our youth and teens and children around the Trans-European division, around the world, doing acts of kindness, trying to make an impact on their community. So we've all got an idea about this. We all know what it is to do compassion. We all got an idea about what it means. But when we look at the Bible and we look at various examples of compassion, how does this play out? I'm always intrigued, guys, about the character of Jonah. Turn with me to the book of Jonah, chapter 3. I'm intrigued by Jonah because some of us who know the story already, in chapters 1 and 2, we know what happened. God called him. What did he do? He ran away. But God called him a second time to do a mission. God called him to rescue a nation that wasn't doing very well. And he was very hesitant. But as we find in Jonah chapter 3, verse 1 to 2, it says these words, and I'll read it in your hearing. The word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. A second time. I'm reading the NRSV version. Get up and go to Nineveh, that great city, and proclaim to it the message that I tell you. And verse 3, so Jonah set out and went to Nineveh according to the word of the Lord. Now, Nineveh was an exceedingly large city, 3 days to walk across. And just to get a context, guys, children, young people, adults, we've got a bit of a timeline of the story. We know that Jonah was called to do a mission, and when he was called, he ran away. A fish swallowed him up. But God called him a second time, and this is where we find ourselves in chapter 3. But he wasn't particularly happy to follow this mission, but he did. And as we follow the account in chapter 4, we find that there was almost some resistance. Remember, to do compassion is to go out your way to show kindness, love, patience, whatever it is, to help people that are going through a struggle. Now, Jonah accepted the call, as some of us know the story. But what intrigues me about Jonah is that he was very hesitant. So even though God called him to proclaim to the people, guys, you need to change. You need to do something different. You need to repent. You need to just change your lives around so that God can save you. And even in doing that, he wasn't really feeling that core value, that enthusiasm, that motivation to make a difference. But credit to Jonah, that's exactly what he did. I look at myself, but I'm not looking at you, and I ask myself the question, when God calls us, do we react similar to Jonah? Are we hesitant? I'm not going to those people. They're savages. They don't keep the Sabbath and eat meat and all the rest of it. How do we respond? But Jonah, credit to Jonah, he respected the call and he did what he had to do. But what Jonah didn't realize, as we follow the account from Jonah 4, verses 1, 2, and so on, we recognize that something significant happened. Jonah by nature was a prophet, and whatever he said made a difference. The people started to change. They wanted to turn their lives around, make a difference, like some of us do ourselves. But a surprise to Jonah was that that wasn't what he was expecting. And when God calls us to do a miraculous work, it's amazing the power that he gives to us and what he could do through us. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Kids, isn't that amazing? Okay, I'm going to get something from the kids. But that's exactly what happened. And when we go through the account, Jonah now starts to lament. Why did I do this? Why did I go and preach my heart out to these people that were actually undeserving, but now God has given them a chance? And as we go through the account, we see that a little tree goes up in the ground to just protect Jonah, because he started to sulk. He started to throw his toys out and say, Lord, why did you allow me to do this? And in his moment of lament, the gracious God that we serve, even at that time where Jonah wasn't behaving himself, as it were, God still reached out to him, grew a tree, and provided him a shade. But because he was so ungrateful, as we read the story, the tree withered away. And he almost cried out to God and said, Lord, why have you put me here? But even in that instance, God was still able to reach out to him. Again, guys, I look at us and I look at myself. God is a compassionate God. And I think when we heard the song of the children singing earlier, and we heard the Bible verses in Colossians, we recognize that God is all loving, all powerful, that gives us that compassion to give everyone a second chance through grace and offers salvation. That is a wonderful thing. Even when we're undeserving, that's exactly what God does for us. But how many of us recognize this? How many of us believe this? How many of us want to actually practice it in our lives? There's a book called The Name of Other, written by an author called Kirsten Brexwit. And he says in his book that when we look at the other, we don't look at their exterior, we look at their interior. And that means what he's trying to say in his book is that we need to be intentional, that when we reach out to people, that we try to find out what their real needs are. And that means probably going the extra mile, taking a time out to find out where people are. And it's said in the context of our lifestyles, we're all crazy busy doing this and that and so forth. But in the book it says the other, that when we take intentional time out to look out for others, we see a change in us. Because it's a wonderful thing to see somebody and give them food. It's a wonderful thing to give counsel or hope or love to somebody who is not going through a particularly good time. When we look at core values, when we look at compassion, I think of the many stories that were just here a month ago when we had the Forgiveness Project. When we had one or two of the stand-up, there was a particular story that really touched me. There was a young lady who had a son, and unfortunately he got into some sort of altercation, and he was stabbed and he died. Some of you may have read the story. It's an international story. But this particular mother, even though she lost her son, was able to not only forgive, but was able to reach out to this now young man who was incarcerated, who was her murder of her son. And over a period of time, she recognized that even though the loss of her son, she was going to reach out to this particular young man. Absolutely extraordinary. Some of us would even say this is bizarre, but that's exactly what she did. He served his time. The mother was there to greet him. The mother was there to say, I am here to support you. And even though she lost her son, her words were that I've lost a son, but I've gained another son. Isn't that incredible? To not only forgive, but to show compassion to somebody who was the cause of you inflicting pain and losing your son. But that's what compassion drives us to do, to make a difference, to change the lives of others, which also allows us to change the lives within ourselves through the grace of God. And as we look around today, guys, as we look around in society, there are many people that we know that are hurting. I was in London and we hear it every day. There are people around Bracknell and wherever we are that are screaming out for people just to show compassion. And I'm proud to say that as a church, as a community, we are doing that. But I wonder, when somebody's hurt you, made you maybe suffer a loss, how easy is it for you to do this? I believe the only way we can do this is by achieving compassion for four values of compassion. I believe that has to be love. We have to love. I believe we have to forgive. I believe we have to have patience. And I believe we have to go the extra mile to be that person to help somebody who's in need. Because I believe that if we are able to do this, we are going to see a change not only in our pews, but amongst our communities. I believe that if we're able to practice this by praying to God, we're going to see a transformation and a revelation wherever we are. But my challenging question to myself and to you, how many of us are willing to do this? We could share lovely stories, but when the rubber hits the road, when we're afflicted by pain, how many of us are able to do that, to practice this? The suggestion I make to you this afternoon, is that when you allow God in your life, by praying to him, forgiving, being patient, and going that extra mile, I believe that we can achieve this. Does anyone here want to achieve that? Is it possible? I don't want to put my hand up and be cheesy, but is it possible? I believe it could be, but I believe that we can do this by supporting each other and being intentional. We're seeing waves in London because we want to make a difference. We're seeing waves in Bracknell and community and within the Trans-European division. And I believe that if we apply this principle to our lives, we can do it. Remember, guys, as I close, it only takes a child to make a difference. We've seen our children this morning. We've seen Greta in Sweden doing amazing things to try and change the world through acts of compassion. And I believe the Church Adventist community, this is something I pray and believe that it is possible for us to do as well.